welcome to another edition of Civil Rhetoric. Today, we're going to be discussing our series again, in which we delve into the wholeness of the person. So, this is another episode of well being. This podcast today, I'm lucky enough to have our guest today. She is amazing. I'm not going to butcher her name, although it's fairly easy. She's kind of in Wonderland, if that's a hint to you guys to what her name is. I'll let her go ahead and introduce herself, what she's about. She has a very main sparkle about herself and her smile in her life, and especially with the way that she talks. You can tell when someone is genuinely happy on the inside and they're not just smiling to mask any kind of, issues or pain that they're experiencing. This is a person that actually has that smile that kind of just radiates from inside out. So, before further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alice, thank you so much for being a guest. Welcome on. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and let the people know who you are and where to find you.
Thanks, Larry, and thank you for your very kind words. I'm very touched by what you just said. So my name is Alice Grasset. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, and I'm also a life coach. And as you can guess from my accent, I'm French. So I moved to the US in 2016. Yeah.
That is awesome. And definitely welcome for being here. We everyone loves a French accent, so don't worry, that's going to go very far for you, especially here in the States. Uh, One thing that I do like to start my well-being podcast with is I like to really focus on our breathing and our breaths. So within 3 breaths, would you mind giving us an example of why you feel that we are all here? And when I say we, I mean not just you and I, but humanity in essence, like while we're here on this planet.
So I think we are on this planet to enjoy every single moment. And specifically today, really, what I would like to share is that um, we can really move from just surviving in our life to really thriving and really enjoying every single moment.
I would agree. One benefit that we have in society today is we're not worried about lions, wolves, and everything else at the door. And that affords us the privilege of being able to kind of take our time and experience living in the moment versus being so constantly caught up in, oh my God, is there a lion behind the brush over there? Or oh my God, is that pack of wolves howling because they're coming to us? We have the luxury to just kind of
Yes,
enjoy the moment and kind of be in it,
absolutely.
and that's one thing I look forward to doing within this conversation with you today. So, we've had a brief introduction
Mhm.
prior. I have a pretty good idea of your background, but for everybody else out there, let's just go ahead and let them know a little bit more in terms of what drives you. Being someone who decided to focus on the meditative things in terms of yoga, which is extremely spiritual, as well as even focusing on things like psilocybin, which we'll get into later, and the experiences with that. Give us a brief a kind of rundown on what directed you towards wanting to explore mindfulness and becoming a more whole person.
Yeah, so to tell you a little bit about my personal story, so I moved to the US in 2016, and at the time I was working for the pharmaceutical industry, and I mean it was very interesting job. I had a lot of opportunities through my job, and um, in 2017, so I was in the US for a little bit more than a year, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So, as you can imagine, that was really a shock. There was a lot of unknowns, a lot of fears. And at the same time, I really had this gut feeling that I should do something, to take care of myself. The doctors were doing the diagnostic, they were making plans for the treatment, but I really wanted to take ownership, of my own well being during that time and play my own role. So I turned to yoga and meditation. So I was already, practicing both, but I really intensified my practice. And I really also turned to coaching and coaching using hypnosis. And the combination of yoga, meditation, and coaching really helped me transform that experience. And today, I think I can say that I'm a much happier person than I was before the cancer experience. And I live, I think, a life with more meaning, more aligned with who I am deep inside.
I think that's an amazing way to take a situation that is so, you know, discouraging, something that is basically, in a lot of cases, a death sentence, or it's an invitation to basically partake into the pharmaceutical field. And now all of a sudden you're getting radiation therapy, and they're talking about all these things that are basically going to be detrimental to your body. It's really interesting that you took that as an opportunity to basically strengthen and embolden yourself, and then actually get to the root of who and what you are as a person. Well-being is, I think, a very apt word for that, because it puts you in a position to begin to start enjoying life a little bit more. And the fact that you transformed that terrible news into something that was a sign of empowerment. I'm just so happy to hear that. And just for the viewers out there, we'd like to know, are you cancer free?
Yeah, so I'm still in treatment because my cancer is, hormone dependent. So I have to take some hormone blockers for still a number of years. I'm considered, cancer free, and I get regular checks every year. And so far, everything is going well.
That is awesome to hear. So in regards to the hormone blockers, are they more estrogen based or like DHT blockers?
Yeah, so it's a drug which is known under the name tamoxifen. So the cancer that I have was estrogen and progesterone positive and HER2 negative. And in that case, what is recommended for women is for several years to take that medication because it blocks the receptors of estrogen, so that prevents the cancer from coming back. So that's really the goal, is to prevent a recurrence by taking that medication.
That is awesome. It's actually really nice that we've got to a point in Western medicine to where it's not like, okay, you automatically need a mastectomy. No, there's a means of being able to maintain a healthy body and lifestyle while also making sure that it decreases the, likelihood of that ever kind of rearing its head again. So really happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, there's many different types of breast cancer. So depending on the different markers, the different cells of the breast cancer, and I think over the last few decades, there was a lot of progress which were made. So we see, the prognosis of women diagnosed with breast cancer is getting better, but it's still, a very serious disease. And I mean, when I was diagnosed, I was 40 years old. So it's still considered young for getting breast cancer. The median age of diagnosis in the US, I think, is around 62 years old.
Oh,
But there's women that are very young that get diagnosed. So women in their 20s, women in their 30s that get diagnosed. And there's no routine screening at that age in place, right? So they don't get the regular screening, and often when they get diagnosed, the cancer is advanced, and often in young women it has a tendency to be more aggressive. So I think
oh.
the message about early detection is very important. So for all women to get to know their breast, to get to know, what's not my own normal, for my breast, so that in case they see a change, they can go and consult with their doctors and really be their own advocate when they feel that something is not right. Because it's only when we are 40 years old that we start this routine screening.
Oh. See, I didn't know that. I do know that, just based on experiences my wife has had within just the medical industry as a whole, a lot of the times, when she says something to a doctor, it kind of gets brushed aside, like, she doesn't necessarily know what she's talking about. And unfortunately, here in Western medicine, a lot of times, women especially tend to be ignored when it comes to them, talking about what they're feeling or something that they're experiencing. So I'm actually very happy to hear that you were an advocate for yourself and you took a stand to make sure that you got all the treatment available to you as well as things outside of the traditional lines of Western medicine to try to make sure that you were, a whole person. So that's awesome to hear. I find it odd that we have so much conversation about breast cancer awareness and
Yeah.
this, that, and the other, but there is no real awareness, at least that I see, pushed out to the populace, aside from people wear pink and they wear the little ribbon and they say, "I'm breast cancer aware." It's like, well, I didn't even know that there were multiple types. I thought there was like maybe 2 or 3, like with prostate cancer. But to hear that there's that many
Yeah.
and that wide of a variation, and then it's aggressive in younger women, you would hope that the money that is raised by these breast cancer awareness, campaigns would go towards making sure that younger women are actually also getting the same access to make sure that the prevention of that breast cancer becoming fatal is, actually put in place.
Yeah. And I really like when you use the word prevention, because I think, as a Western society, there's probably more that we could do in terms of prevention. And I'm not only talking about cancer, I'm talking about our health in general. I think there's big improvement that we could make in our lifestyle. So talking about nutrition, talking about exercising, having better sleep. So there's a number of things that we can do to stay healthier and live longer lives. But very often we don't get the right information or very little information about that. And I think there's probably something that should be done in that direction, really talking more about what is a healthy diet and the importance of exercising every week and moving the body and not sitting in front of the computer for 10 hours in a row, right? The body is made for moving. So it's important to share those messages, because in the long run, this could help avoid so many cases of cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I mean,
Yes.
there's so much good that we could do by putting in place better prevention.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that. You would assume, and especially Western countries that are, first world and beyond, that there would be a little bit more of a focus on maintaining health versus, just take these pills and then to counteract what those pills do to you, take these pills over here as well. And then, like, as I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, wait, then that would mean less money for the companies that are selling you pills. So, yeah, I can kind of see why we don't do that here.
And then it's interesting what you're saying, because I think I've read, so I would assume that it's correct, but that in ancient China, um, the role of the doctor was to prevent you from falling sick. So you would pay your doctor if you were healthy. And then if you become ill, then you would stop paying the doctor because he didn't do his job correctly, right? So I think it's very interesting, that it brings a different paradigm. Maybe the role of the doctor is to keep us healthy in the first place, and not a Western medicine, which is more about fixing something which is broken, but it's the disease is already present.
I would agree. I'm just a big proponent of, if there's a glass vase on the counter, I'd rather prevent the glass vase from falling versus it falling, breaking, and then trying to super glue it back
Right.
together again.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
like the image. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also figure, given the resources that, the United States and just most of the Western world has, that there would be a little bit more of a focus on that, especially when it comes to the experiences we had with COVID-19, and how there was a major rush and a push for vaccinations. And I'm not a person who is against for anything. I don't really have much of an opinion on it because I don't know enough. But I will say I was a little ashamed that our country didn't push anything in terms of physical health. I mean, just even if you look at it, I would imagine a person who goes in physical, decent shape, that if they experienced, any type of ailment, they'd have a better opportunity at survival versus someone, who sat
Yeah.
on their couch all day in front of a computer screen and just continued to eat, processed foods. I would figure that that would have been a message that was placed in parcel as well, but unfortunately not. It was just a lot of, "Get the shot, you'll get better, that'll fix everything." Aside from, like, your other heart condition issues and, your other, visual issues and things along those lines, and the low self-esteem and the anxiety that we're all experiencing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe, a medium like the podcast could be a really good way for us, like normal people to share more about that, right? Because we can also play a role at our own level and share about our experience and share those recommendations with our loved ones. Sometimes, we tend to wait for some kind of authority to to tell us what we do, but I think we have a role to play, and we can change things also at our own scale.
I agree. That's why I'm a person who believes that the sphere of influence we have around us, as long as we focus on doing all that we can to make the world a little bit better than it was when we
Mm,
got here, I think that that can kind of be a contagion, in a good way.
yes.
And I've noticed, like, I'm not a part of most social media trends or social media in general. However, I have noticed because my wife's really into, like, TikTok, and she'll tell me, she's like, "Oh, they're now talking about, putting a bunch of makeup on isn't good for you because your skin absorbs 4 pounds a year. So they're going to a more natural means of doing this." I'm like, "That's actually really great to hear."
Yeah.
And, I think that that movement, that there is definitely room for it, and then I think other people, like, innately, I think our souls, like, our spirits kind of cry out for those things, because no one ever feels like, "Oh, man, I just had an amazing day," after you have a McDonald's combo meal and a soda. You don't feel like, "Oh, man, I've fulfilled my life's journey," you know?
Yeah.
If anything, you kinda feel a little bit of that regret, and you're just like, "Oh, why did I do that to myself?" So, yeah.
Where is the broccoli?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So one question I have for you is, everyone has like a self-image. So for you, who would you say is Alice? Like, who is Alice?
It's a very good question. Sometimes we try to define ourselves by what we do, or if we are a mother or sister, or um, I think what comes to my mind when you ask me that question is I'm an explorer. I like to explore. And what I like to explore the most is the mind body connections, to see how my body influence my mind and how my mind influence my body, and how can I have them talk to each other and work together so I can be my best self in terms of health, but also in terms of what I do into the world. So it's been a passion for many, many years. I remember when I was about 10 years old, it's when I had my first experience with meditation. I was growing up in the countryside. There was not much to do, so I loved listening to the French public radio. And one evening, I found this program, which was a guided meditation. And I was amazed at how relaxed I felt, after the meditation. And I think that was the first little spark in my mind about I wanted to understand more about that. How did that person who was guiding me manage to get me into that state where I was so relaxed? And following that, I did different trainings. I got trained in neurolinguistic programming, in hypnosis, third generation hypnosis, and the yoga, the meditation. And I continue my exploration, every opportunity I have to learn more about the mind body connection. I try to see it and really enjoy it.
That is awesome. I mean, as a 10-year-old, you must have been extremely mature. When I was 10 years old, meditation was the furthest thing from my
I,
mind.
I don't I don't think I was very mature, but I was a very anxious kid. I was very stressed, always, a little bit hyper vigilant. And people would tell me, "Oh, you have to relax." But for me, they were really speaking in a different language. I was like, "What is it? Relaxing, right?" I remember my dance teacher was telling me, "Oh, relax," but what is it? And it was the first time in that meditation that I actually understood what relaxation was. That I could feel my muscle really, start to melt, my brain starting to slow down. and to be more at peace. So I don't think it was maturity, but it was just what I needed at that moment.
I do find it interesting how the universe kind of, when you need something, it just seems to magically appear in some form or fashion. And the fact that it happened to happen to you, I assume you were outside when you were going through the guided meditation.
No, that was, on the radio. So I was just lying down on my bed and following the instruction. And yeah,
See, I mean, just even that in its aspect, the fact that you're there, it was more than likely a situation that allowed you to really kind of listen and follow along
yeah,
with it. You didn't get a knock at the door about coming down for lunch or dinner or anything, and, no one came over at that time and say, "Hey, let's go outside and play." It just happened to happen at a time that was
yeah,
ideal for you. So
yes,
I do find that just, like, the universe finds its way of, helping people, and as long as we're open to it, as long as we're open to that door being unlocked and we actually go touch the handle, I think it happens to more people than they realize,
yes,
especially someone who's, going through like a constant bombardment of just like negative emotions, negative thought, and then allowing that to kind of manifest itself into how they go about their day and live their existence. So I'm really happy that you're able to find something that kind of just like nail on the head. I needed this, it got you to a point, and it started you on this journey
yeah,
of becoming
absolutely.
an explorer, so that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So now in regards to the fields, I know that you've mentioned, meditation, hypnotherapy. What was it about those fields that attracted you, and would you consider those to be your specialties?
So I started with the yoga and the meditation, because in the yoga practice there's always a meditation part, and from there I got more and more interested about the mind, and that led me then to the NLP and the hypnosis. Um, what I really like about meditation and hypnosis is that you put yourself in a state where you are connected to yourself, but you are also connected to something bigger. So you expand your awareness to be able to welcome everything that is present in the moment. And from there, I think we get access to much more resources than if we get stuck into our frontal prefrontal cortex, in our very connected brain. So we tap into our subconscious, and there is so much, information and resources, and that's what I'm interested, to work with. So the meditation and the hypnosis, even if they're different practices, they have some commonalities, and I really enjoy working with that, with my clients.
No, I would definitely agree. I do believe that that mind-body connection allows you to, in a way, kind of hypnotize yourself. I'm, really big on Wim Hof. He's a guy who
Hmm.
practices breathing. Oh, okay, so perfect. I'm actually in the middle of, building a cold plunge frame right now. So,
Okay.
yeah,
I just stick to the shower. For me, it's good.
it's enough, but I know that with doing that, I kind of have to, hypnotize myself into focusing on the breathing versus the physical uncomfortableness I'm feeling. And then I go from, "I don't know if I can do 30 seconds," to now it's 3 minutes later, and I'm like, "Oh, man, how did I do that?" So, no,
Yeah.
I agree, there is a major connection between the mind and body, and that we kind of treat them as separate entities. You have if you go to the hospital, for example, they talk to you, they give you pills to make you physically feel better or to mask a pain or an issue that you're going through. And if you go to a therapist says, "You know what? Hey, let's focus on your mind and getting that stronger and getting into place." But something a practice like yoga does is it allows you to connect the 2, and it puts you in a p an oppor it puts you in a position to have more opportunity at success for yourself and feeling whole. So, I can
Yes.
definitely see where that connection formed for you.
Yes, absolutely. And in the work that I do with my client, I really like to use the body as the entry, into the work, because very often when people are stressed, when they're anxious, it's very difficult to be able to do self-reflection when you are in that state, you have to go back to the body. You have to reconnect to the wisdom of the body so that you are able to come into a state where you're going to be able to do more of the cognitive work. So I think exactly what you're saying, we tend to separate, but if we bring them together, we go more deeper and we bring also more sustainable changes. So the combination of practice for me is very, very important.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Now, what I find interesting is you have a background in pharmaceuticals and you're now more of a mindful, teacher, instructor. How do you feel, I guess, about Western medicine? You kind of touched on it a little bit when you talked about the philosophy on Eastern medicine and how they approached it. How do you personally feel about Western medicine?
Well, I think there's a lot of great things about Western medicine. I think, in terms of imaging, there's so much progress which has been done. I mean, now there's amazing technology. I think also surgery, all the tools that doctors can use for surgery, they're able, to do a surgery from a different location. I mean, it's mind blowing, right? But at the same time, there's probably things that can be looked at differently. I mean, we talked about prevention. I think also that would be great for Western medicine to move to a more holistic model. So to also incorporate other modalities. So acupuncture, massage therapy, yoga. I mean, there's a number of additional tools that we could use really to help people, to help them heal. And sometimes Western medicine is sort of saying, yeah, you can do it if you want, but it's never something that they suggest to you. It's very rare when a doctor, suggests to you to add those therapies into your treatment plan. And I think that's something that probably there's progress that could be done, and especially for the mental aspect of it. And here I'm going to talk more about my experience of cancer. The emotional part of it was ignored, or was not really. I mean, it was all about diagnosis. It was all about treatment. What was the right surgery? What was the right treatment? And so what happened for me is that after the end of my treatment, about 3 years after, the heavy part of treatment, so it was COVID. So I think, COVID was very challenging for a lot of us from a mental health standpoint
Oh,
because we were
yes.
shut down and isolated from our loved ones. And I started to have pain, in my body. I started to feel dizzy. I was not feeling good. And I was really, really afraid that I had a recurrence of my cancer. So I went for some exams. They were reassuring, but I had spiraled. My mind was stuck into anxiety. And it was very difficult for me, to get out of these negative thoughts and to get out of the fear. And I was lucky enough to have a great oncologist, and she was able to see that I was suffering, and she sent me to a therapist who works with who does some research with psychedelic oh help me psychedelic substances to help people suffering from depression, so for cancer patients and survivors suffering from depression. So I met with that therapist, Dr. Brian Richards, and so because of what was going on is he told me about one of the study that he was running using psilocybin with cancer patients, and I decided to take part into that study. And I think one of the reasons I did it, well, first because I felt really stuck, and my meditation practice was no longer enough, to help me cope. And also, I really liked the fact that it was done by people that had a lot of experience. It was in a medical setting, so I feel very reassured. So I enrolled into the trial, and so it's you meet with the therapist several times, and then you come for an entire week. And the first 3 days there's some preparation, and then so it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and on Thursday you get the dose of psilocybin. So it was considered a high dose of psilocybin.
Oh, do you happen to know, how it was extracted? And if not, in terms of extraction, how high of a dose it was?
So I know that it's not like the dry mushroom. It's like a synthetic form, I think, of the psilocybin, and so it comes in a little like in a little how do you say it? A
Like a
little
pill?
gel. Yeah, like a pill.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a pill. And so, because of course, in a clinical trial setting, they want to have good control of the dose that you're getting, the purity and everything. So I think it's probably the best way is to have something synthetic. And I think it was 25 micrograms, something like that.
Whoa, that's a lot.
So I
Whoa.
think it's that it's considered high dose. And so you get the dose in the morning, and then you are in your own room, so you have a nice sofa, and the therapist stays with you, and you are asked to lie down, to put a headset with the music. You wear like a eye pillow, just to block light, and then you go on a journey for several hours. So it was 8 hours total, and um, it's one of these experiences that are very difficult in a way to describe, but it's like having a lucid dream. So really being a dream-like state, having some images, having feelings, having message given to you as you go through the journey. And it was really life transforming for me. Uh,
Wow, that's just really interesting. So, on your journey, for want of a better word or term, was it something that you had ever experienced before? Had you ever dabbled in any kind of psychedelics or anything along
no,
those lines?
no,
Also,
no,
this is very first time.
very first time. And I mean, I would never have done it if it was not in that context. The fact that it was done with professionals, in a medical context. If you have an issue, it's in an hospital, right? So they can come and help you. There's always somebody with you. So it was very, very reassuring. And the fact that it was with a therapist, you can also, if something goes on, something happens and you need to talk about it, the therapist is here with you, so you can have that dialogue. So I think for me, the framework was very, very important.
No, I would agree. I mean, for me, that's something I'd be terrified of. I would need to kind of be in a situation or in some type of, like, controlled setting like you were in, because I would just be terrified of something like that. I've not experienced, but I've read and I've seen, different studies on, like, ayahuasca journeys and people taking, like, magic mushrooms and things of that nature. Did you happen to come across, what is it, the machine elves or anything like that? Did you have hallucinations, especially since your eyes, like, the light was kind of shut out? So, yeah, I'm
Uh,
just a little a little curious.
yeah. So what is really surprising, that was surprising to me, is that if you it's very but if you need to go to the bathroom, or if you're hungry, you can completely reorient yourself, so you're not hallucinating. For me, it was not like external hallucination. And I was able to go to the bathroom when I needed to. I was able to eat some food, so it's not like things happening around you. But when you are lying down, closing your eyes, one of the first thing is the expansion of time. Like 30 minutes, suddenly you have the impression that it's 4 hours.
Whoa.
So I would talk with my therapist and say, "Hey, what time is it?" And he would say, "Well, what do you think?" And I would say, "Oh, it's 6 o'clock at night. We're almost done." And he would say, "No, you've been in it since 30 minutes." So it's you really lose your sense of time, and then there's a phase which is like what is called the dissolution of the ego. So you lose the sense of your own little story, and you feel really, um, your consciousness expand. You are part of something bigger. So that's also, one of the things that psychedelics and psilocybin um, provide is this sense of expanded consciousness. Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
No, I find that so interesting. My experience with mushrooms are usually just gonna be button mushrooms, lion's mane
Shiitake.
mushrooms. Yeah, you know, and I'm actually really big on what fungi can do for the
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
So I'm really big on, like, the consumption of mushrooms, just they're not typically magic mushrooms or ever magic mushrooms. But there is a gentleman by the name of Paul Stamets
Yes.
who yeah, I love his books, I love
Yeah.
his documentaries. He's a guy that I've actually been looking into for quite some time, and he's an advocate for psilocybin and the experiences and what one can learn about themselves on those types of journeys. Now, you mentioned the dissolution of the ego. What was that experience like for you, and do you feel like you got to know yourself a little bit better going through that experience?
Yeah. So I think for me, there's maybe two main learnings from my journey. So the first one was I got to meet my fear, sort of in a symbolic way, but I got to meet my fear and have a dialogue with my fear, and being able to understand that my fear was actually a call for love. That was me asking myself to to take care of myself and to be accepting my emotions and my feeling, and to be more welcoming, of myself in a way. And so that was a very strong moment. And the other strong moment was the sort of realization that we build stories, right? We build stories about ourselves, about who we are. And but if we go behind the narrative, there is an infinite number of possibilities.
Yes.
And when we step out of it, step out of the stories, we reach a state, in meditation, we say equanimity. So, this state where we are calm and balanced and steady, and where we don't judge anymore the story. And for me, that was really, I mean, it was a concept that I had read about, but to be able to experience it in my body as I was in the journey, I mean, that changed so many things. It gave me a complete different perspective on life, and who we are, and our journey on this earth. So yeah, that was really life changing in that sense.
Awesome. So now, was this a one-time dosage? Did you take multiple doses? And did you get different experiences each time that you would dose?
So it was a unique dosing, so just one dose, so just one high dose, and then several sessions of integration. So the day after the dosing, we met again with the therapist to go over, what we about our journey, what were the key learnings, and then um, several weeks after and several months after, we met again. So there's really a very good follow up. So making sure that you make good use of what you've learned. And I'm not sure it's the right way to put it, but that you integrate and that you take the time for self-reflection. And yeah, and I think that's very important because I mean, psychedelics open doors, right? It opened doors of consciousness. And I mean, it's a gift. and we want to take, most of, the best, and to be able to um, really use those teaching in our lives. So I think it's important to have this integration to be able to do that.
No, I would agree. I'm a spiritual person more than I am religious, and I would say that I am a believer, or at least I can see credence in the stoned ape theory. Basically, that our ancestors were walking through the plains once they came out of the jungles and from the trees. They saw these big meaty mushrooms on the ground. They ate them, and then they had this rapid expansion on human consciousness and our mind, and that dissolution of the ego and that removal of fear, which made us more apt to, engage with predators that we had at the time and things of that nature.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it's actually really cool to hear you give your explanation of it, because it sounds like that was a type of journey that you went on to where
yeah,
you were able to find comfort in your fear and in yourself, and removing all the labels that we're bombarded with and that we place on ourselves. Because as you mentioned, there's an infinite amount of opportunities and options. Just because you wore a blue shirt today or a blue blouse today, it could have been red, it could have been green, it could have been orange.
absolutely. And I think there is a really nice parallel with the work that we do in hypnosis, because the type of the hypnosis that I practice, it's about reestablishing the communication between conscious and subconscious. And in our subconscious, this is where the infinite number of possibilities are. So if you are stuck in your little model of the world, I mean, at the end, we're going to suffer. But if we are able to see so many more possibilities behind, we are able to start to look a little bit differently, to make the model move a little bit differently. And we change our perspective. And yeah, it's fascinating.
I would agree. That's why the human mind, even from being a young child, it's always really intrigued me, because it's so elastic and it's so infinite at the same time. Because when you think of something that has elasticity, you imagine that it has to have an area that it needs to come back to before
Hmm.
it can expand again. And the human mind is kind of all of those things in one, because the quickness of which thought pops into a head, or things along those lines, and the idea that you can take a thought, an intangible thing inside your brain. And even if you drew something on a sheet of paper that originated from just a thought, just like,
Yeah,
just the synapse and the electrolysis happening in your brain, and then become a physical, tangible object. Like, I've always been so fascinated with that. Like, I mean, I think that's one of the greatest gifts of being human and humanity. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, now for yourself, after having the experience you did, with the psilocybin, have you, and of course, within the realm of what you can say, have you experienced journeys similar to that, since that time?
No, I haven't. I mean, I'm not excluding the possibility that to do it later on, but um, I think for now I'm good.
No,
uh,
that's awesome. That's actually what I hear a lot. A lot of people that have taken that journey, especially,
yeah.
like, not in a recreational setting, but, with something that actually has a route. I've noticed it's like when you ask them about another drug, someone's like, "Oh yeah, marijuana. I've used marijuana, and then I use it again and use it again because I they're chasing that high." But what
Mhm.
I've noticed is people that have, done an actual study or been a part of an ayahuasca experience, they tend to say, "Well, nah, I don't really need to do that again. I kind of got from it what was necessary."
Yeah. And maybe at a later stage in my life, maybe I will feel the desire to go to do it again, to go further. But I think right now, um, I think my meditation practice and my yoga practice are really the foundation, for me. And what is fascinating is that the psychedelic journey gives you a little taste of what you can achieve with meditation. So it's almost a guide in your meditation. And so after the journey, actually my meditation went really much deeper. So yeah, so I feel that right now the practice that I have bring me what I need mm, in terms of mental health and in terms of spiritual growth.
I think that's amazing, and the fact that it was a tool that continues to give to you without going through the experience and as a whole, I think that's life affirming for some people,
Yeah,
especially, you know, if someone finds it difficult to be able to relax enough to meditate or things of that nature. The fact that you're able to take that tool, apply that, and get long-term use out of it, I think that that's amazing.
yeah,
I'm really happy that you were able to share that experience with us because hearing that coming from someone who started in such in a place of, you know, basically looking and needing help, and then going from that place to this strong, you know, assertive individual that you are now, I think that it's amazing to see. And it's even hard for me to put myself in a frame of mind to believe, like, there was a time in which this person who has such a radiant smile, you know, was, you know, feeling so down. So
yeah,
it's great to see that you can go from feeling so down
yeah,
and be able to turn that around completely, and I think that that's an important message. So in regards to the type of, hypnotherapy as well as, yoga that you do, what is the a little bit more explanation on the type of hypnosis that you use, as well as the type of yoga that you do? 'Cause I am somebody who I don't know what I do, I just do yoga poses. I go through my vinyasas, but I don't know
yeah.
where it's from, and, like, sometimes the room is hot, sometimes it's cold, I don't know, I just do it, you know?
So I at the moment I mean I took the decision to specialize into practices to help cancer patients and survivors. So my yoga practice is yoga for cancer. So it's a methodology that was developed by a lady who went through cancer, and then she really studied how yoga can benefit cancer patients and survivors. So it's very safe because after cancer treatment, you need to make sure that the people who they don't injure themselves. You know, like after chemotherapy, the bones can be more brittle, so there are some poses that should be avoided. And but at the same time, there are some poses that are really good for cancer patients because it activates the lymphatic system. It activates, you know, from a cardiovascular standpoint. So there's a number of benefits of the yoga practice, and the yoga for cancer is specifically designed for this population. So it helps with range of motion, it helps with flexibility, it helps with balance, it helps with as well, you know, like sleep when people struggle with sleep when they go through treatment. It helps with mood, with anxiety, depression. So it's a really really nice practice that has a lot of benefits. And then in terms of the coaching, so I use my NLP background and hypnosis. And the hypnosis that I do is called third generation hypnosis. And you know, it's really a very gentle hypnosis where the person is always aware of what's going on. I'm not making any suggestions. It's more about establishing a dialogue between the conscious and the subconscious of the person. So, to help them go into a state where they can tap into the resources of their subconscious. And so it's working more with symbols, with images. It's working about being able to welcome the feelings, welcome the emotions. So it's, you know, um, it's a very respectful. It's an approach that respects all the different layers of the person.
I think that's a really good way to explain it because me being a layman, when I think of hypnosis, I imagine you go to a magician show and someone's trying to get you to, you know, pretend that you're a bird or something like that. So
Right.
knowing that it's something that is so gentle and something that is, you know, very I guess I would say mindful because if you're
Yes.
approaching it from that place, that just seems like it's more of a you care and there's more of a connection towards the person and what they're experiencing and helping them become strong enough to help take care of themselves. You know, you're
Yeah.
teaching the fishermen how to fish versus giving them a fish, and I think that that's really amazing. I Now, what was it in particular? Like, I know your NLP background was like a driving force of it, but what was it that made you say, "You know what? Hypnotherapy and coaching in this means is something that I see as a benefit for people." Like, what was it that really pushed you in that direction?
So NLP and third generation hypnosis, generative trance, they really go hand in hand. They the two modalities have been developed in parallel. Some of the same people were involved, and one of my teacher, Stephen Gilligan in California, is really the one who has spread the model of the generative trance. So he has worked with Milton Erickson, who is a very famous, hypnotist. And so he is the one who built that very gentle model. And I took some classes with him, and I was very inspired by his work. And that's something that I want to be able to share with other people, because I've been able to benefit from it, right? When you take classes, there's always they always ask for volunteers so that they can demonstrate the techniques, and had the opportunity of working with Stephen directly. So him working with me and going through the hypnosis with him. And it was also, life changing to be able to connect with a different part of myself, and not to be limited just to the cognitive brain, but to be able to tap into more the world of symbols, archetypes, all of that. It's such a rich field that we don't use very often. So I was very, very fascinated with that. And at the end of the day, I think when somebody struggles with an issue, with a challenge, they are the one who have the answer inside. So the role of the hypnotist is really to create the space and to help the person do this exploration for themselves. We were talking about exploration before. So it's really creating the space, giving them the framework so that they can do this exploration and find their own answer. And I think the answer is not here. It's from the communication between the heart and the brain that you will find the answer. It's not like a fixed model.
I would agree, because I know that if you think primarily with one or the other, it leaves you open, to dissatisfaction. However, when you combine the two, I mean, even if it is a wrong choice, so to speak, you just feel a little bit more better. You feel better about the decision that you've made. So
Yeah.
that's something I definitely see that I can definitely agree with. Now, when it comes to, using these modalities, are there any type of, potential side effects or anythings like that?
Um, Side effects, not to my knowledge. I think it's where the hypnotist has to have the correct training and understanding of the technique to be able to create that safe space. And then it's all about titration. I don't know if you remember your chemistry classes where you were doing some titration. It's about feeling, how much you bring in that moment. So when we work in the hypnosis, the first thing is to bring the client in this generative state. So a state of being centered, being connected, to oneself, to other, and spiritually. And from that state is where we do the work. And every time that we see that the person is going back to their um, to the state associated with the issue, we bring them back to the generative state. So we never let them, go into the negative thoughts and sort of mental, rumination. We bring them back to the generative state. So that's what I call a little bit the titration. We we bring the issue into a very positive state where they can work on it. But if the the challenge takes too much space, we bring the person back in the safe place. So that's very progressive and very gentle.
Definitely, I can see that. As you were explaining it, I was imagining flying a kite. And, basically the kite, when it's windy, it's a nice day out, you take it into the middle of the field away from trees. And as the kite begins to venture towards the trees, what you do is you guide the kite away from the trees. And that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
imagining when you're talking about this. And when it comes to titrations, like I'm really big on soap making. So it's something I still do today. So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah.
Well, yeah, so it's the difference between this generative state and when you have an issue and when you have all this negative emotion, we describe that as being the crash state. So what you want is to take the person from the crash state to the generative state and to look at the issue in that more supportive state. Then if the person goes back into crash, you bring them back into the positive one. So that's the work of the therapist, is really to help the person stay into the generative state.
And that definitely would keep the therapist engaged, versus, if you go to a traditional, doctor's checkup, the doctor is gonna basically be taking notes, won't make eye contact with you. It's like, "Okay, you're done? Alright, good, we're out of here."
Yeah,
And what
it's
and what you're describing is a therapist that needs to be extremely engaged with their patient, because if they are venturing, as you mentioned, into that crash zone or that crash area, you're able to kind of save them from that. And I could imagine even just that feeling to the patient has got to be one of just like great relief, because not only are they avoiding the pitfalls, they're also having an opportunity to see that they're not alone. And a lot of
yes,
times when you're in that type of state, you feel alone, and you feel like the weight of the world is crushing you.
yeah,
So the fact that you're there, able to help guide someone out of that, I think that's amazing.
yeah.
That is like this has been an even better conversation than I anticipated. I had high expectations. So
But I really like that you speak about feeling alone. I think that's one of the reason I decided to work with cancer patients and survivors, is because cancer is such a lonely disease. You really feel super, super lonely. Um, I mean, you have the friends, the family, and everything, but sometimes it's difficult to share everything that's going on, for you when you're going through cancer. And to be able to work with somebody who's been through the same experience, then I think you are you're more able to share, you're more able to open up and and to do the self-reflection that I think is important at that stage.
I would agree. I mean, cancer is definitely a very lonely, you know, I don't even wanna give it the term of disease, just unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
Um, it's at the time, at least from my experience, it's been managing your own personal feelings, and then managing the feelings of the people around you, and then at the same time feeling like you're orchestrating, like, your own internal demise.
Mhm.
So, having someone that's experienced it before, that you can talk to, that can understand and relate to the pitfalls that you're currently going through, and to see someone get to the other side of it, I mean, I agree. I think that that's extremely empowering, and that's one thing when you're going through something so negative, having that ray of
Yeah.
hope, that ray of, even if the worst were to occur, I don't have to allow this to define me. I can
Yes.
still be myself, and I can still thrive, as you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
So I find that extremely interesting, and it's funny how all of the things that have happened and occurred to you kind of led you down this path of self-discovery. And, these terrible instances actually ended up being things that were just very beneficial for you. So I'm actually extremely happy to hear that and to see that you're someone that's come around so full circle with it. And now that you're able to kind of give back that same amount of just assistance and help that you receive from so many different areas, and now you can actually pass that along and pay it forward. So that's actually extremely interesting and great to know. So now when it comes to, I guess, your experiences with patients, aside from money, because we need money in the world to make it go around, yada, 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 do you feel like you get anything from working with patients so closely?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think especially the sense of community, you know, to be working with people that are going through what I've been through. And I mean, I'm still in treatment. Technically, I'm still in treatment. So it creates a special sense of community, and their stories are very touching. It really speaks to my heart. And for me, it's about where can I be of service, and I think that's the place where I can really help the people the most. Um, it's from what I've learned to be able to um, give them a different perspective, to be able to listen to them, and to be able to create a space where they can welcome their feelings and their emotions. Uh, for me, that's something that is really rewarding at the end of the day, when I can see them um, having more hope and having reconnecting with themselves. It's something so important and so rewarding, as a coach, as a guide.
That's something I can definitely see. Just the ability, especially being someone that's experienced themselves, being able to help pull someone out of that pit and out of that chasm and allow them to see that there is hope available and to see that spark. I mean, I could imagine that that in itself is, worth its weight in gold because you're actually helping another individual and you're not just, giving them a drug that, treats the issue or masks the issue. You're giving them the tools, you're giving them the power, you're giving them the strength to build and basically begin to thrive versus just surviving in today's society. I know we're up on it, but I did want to end with one final question for you because this is something that I kind of like to talk about when having these conversations. Uh, what are some ways that people can start kind of having a more, and from your opinion, like a more holistic means of approaching life, like someone who doesn't necessarily have the money or the access to meet with a coach like yourself or to discuss with a coach like yourself. What are just some quick little tools that you believe that they can use as a starting point to kind of build that foundation to becoming a more whole, well-being?
Yeah. So I think there's a number of things that people can do in terms of lifestyle. We've talked about nutrition. I think that's definitely an area that people can look into, making sure that they eat healthy foods, lots of nutrients. Sleep is super, super, super important. Having enough hours of good quality sleep, it's something that I think people we should talk more about sleep. I think we don't talk enough about the importance of sleep. Exercising, our human body is made for moving. So just a walk, you don't have to take a membership to a fancy gym, just a nice walk. Just dancing with your partner, with your spouse in the living room, get the body moving. It's so, so important. And then I think putting in place, a meditation practice, it doesn't have to be a super, super long meditation. It can be just like a few minutes of being able to sit down, to focus on the breath, welcome whatever arises in the moment without judgment, and just start to build on that, just start to build on that practice. And then there's a lot of nice apps that people can use for meditation. They're free, so I would really advise people to look into it. Sometimes, people turn to meditation when they are already in a state of crisis. But I think what is important is to establish a strong foundation before the crisis happens, because unfortunately in life we will all have crises. But
Yes.
if you have a strong foundation, right, then when the crisis happens, you will be more able, to respond to the situation. You will not go into the crash state that we were talking about as fast as if you were, not having that practice. So I think it's mental fitness, right? So we do the physical fitness, but we should also work on our mental fitness, and meditation is probably the most beautiful tool to do that.
That's something I can agree with. It took me a while to get the hang of meditation because for so long, because my mind races to many, many different things, to where I'll start, okay, I'm just going to focus on, I'll have a vase or a vase or something in my head that I want to focus on to experience it, or even just like the smell of the room or anything along those lines. And then all of a sudden, it's like my dog when a squirrel runs by, like something in my head just goes by. It's like, well, what about this? I was like, no, 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 no. Let me focus back on that. So it did take some time, but the biggest part for me was just getting over the fact that it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be a
Absolutely.
specific way, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And the work, like you're saying, is in the coming back. It's becoming aware that the mind has drifted, and coming back to the breath, coming back to the body, coming back to the sensation. This is the work. It's the coming back. And that's really what we have to practice. That's the muscle we're developing. Yeah.
I would agree. One thing I would like to say is this was an amazing conversation. I look forward to hopefully having you as a guest again. One thing that I am trying to work on right now is I've had an opportunity to speak with a couple people within the wellness community that, and I've noticed that although there are different modalities, there are a lot of, interconnecting lines, especially when it comes to like diet, exercise, and then just like personal growth through things like meditation and yoga. If at all, I'd love an opportunity to reach out to you in the future, see if I can have you come on and have like, 4 to 5 other guests on with us while we discuss, specific modalities, debunking some, proving some, or even just like approaching something with an open mind so that we can kind of allow ourselves to begin walking towards, that feeling of okay, wholeness and completeness.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds a lovely idea. I think there's so many different modalities out there, and they complement each other. So it's really nice, to have this community of practitioners, right? And to be able to grow and to learn together. That's so important. So thanks for creating that opportunity for people.
Oh, no problem. I think that, for without getting too metaphysical, I think that that's what we're here for. I think we're supposed to connect, we're supposed to interact, and we're supposed to share, positive things in life versus the constant sharing of negative emotions and feelings. And I think that that's what kind of helps make the world a little bit better because
Mhm.
as of right now, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of turmoil. And, all we need is love is it's stood the test of time
Yeah,
because I think we all internally understand and know that
yeah,
that feeling of love is something that can help set us free. So,
absolutely.
Alice, thank you so much for being a guest. I would like you to let everyone know where they can find you, how they can access you. When the editor gets this, she'll be sure to go ahead and add all of your information. So as you're saying it, it'll come up on screen. So any and everything you have, go ahead and announce it.
So people can find me on my website. So www.sparklesofgrace.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well under my name, Alice Grasset, and I'm on Instagram, Sparkles of Grace by Alice.
Awesome. Alice, thank you again for being a guest. Hang tight, but I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here. And there'll just be a couple.